All right. Welcome, Valerie.
Ellen.
Hi. I know we're both a little nervous, and since this is brand new, for myself, I won't speak for you. So really want to thank you for doing this, jumping right in with me.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I feel honored to be your guest here.
Thank you. I'm excited because I really want to highlight and bring to the world this idea of holistic therapy and all the different areas and components that may include. And so I like to find out, sort of your path into this area, into this umbrella, because it is, I think, a pretty big umbrella.
Right.
Um, but maybe before we get started, I know you're an LMFT, so maybe you could talk a little bit about who you are, kind of introduce yourself, and I'll have a bio certainly on the website. But yeah, feel free to share your background and your path so far.
Yeah, yes. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. I went to grad school here in the Bay Area. My specialty is holistic studies, and my degree is counseling psychology. So, from the very beginning of my grad school program, I knew that I wanted to take this path into the holistic realm because it very much aligned with my own path leading up to grad school.
Yeah.
But I grew up here in the Bay Area, um, born and raised, and I identify as Filipino American, and that certainly informed my decision to do the work that I do as well, which I can talk a little bit about at some point. But very much recognizing that my upbringing and my passions have brought me to this place.
I really want to invite you to go ahead and talk about your Filipino American identity, actually.
Yeah. So my parents immigrated here, and so I am the first of my family or of my siblings to be born here. And so just growing up with, the mentality of my parents wanting to, give us the best that they can, and that informed how they like raised us and what they taught us and what was important for us to focus on, right? Like our education and making sure that we have that financial stability in this new country that they like gave up everything and sacrificed for us to be here.
Mhm.
That lifestyle, right? That value really informed how we were raised. And so growing up, that was important to me. And
Mhm.
then along the way, I noticed there were just some things that I could also have benefited from learning from, like dealing with my feelings and emotions, which is not, emphasized or
Yeah.
wasn't emphasized as much for me growing up. Um, and so that was something that is also a big piece and a big catalyst of why I went into this work, was
Mhm.
the filling that space for me, filling that gap for me.
Yeah. Well, I know that not talking about emotions and feelings is very prevalent across different Asian American cultures, and there's a whole other history of that that I think is very true for a lot of people. And as we get older, trying to figure out what is going on and what we're feeling and help that have that inform our decisions. So great to hear that you started to recognize that, and it sounds like you really sought out ways to not only for yourself, but to help others.
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen myself as curious and like interested in understanding why people do the things they do. Like, I just remember calling my mom out for doing something early on. And, and then in high school, I took my first psychology class, and I remember thinking, like, wow, I could understand why people do the things they do and have this job in like listening to people and helping them through like tough moments in their life, that just those pieces came together for me in a really like intuitive way. And that just kind of put me down the path of like therapy. I'm going to be a therapist. This is what I'm going to do.
Wow. So you knew pretty early on in high school that you wanted to go into this.
Yeah, it really stood out to me. Yeah, not to say that there were like detours and like second guessing myself along the way or outside factors telling me to do something else with my life, which is
Yeah.
family piece, you know. Um, but yeah, there was just a very strong pull to doing this work for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, maybe you could tell us about what is holistic? I know you said that that's your focus in school.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us what that means for you and how do you define that?
Yeah, to me, being a holistic therapist means bringing an awareness and appropriate interventions to support my clients' mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being.
Mhm.
It means that I understand and know, and even for myself, experience that all of those parts of a person are connected and impact each other. And so I believe that all these different parts of a person make are different like access points to a person's inner self, to that person's authentic self. And so being that holistic therapist means that I see you as a whole person. All of these parts make up who you are. Um, and that you are a complex, multidimensional, imperfect person and exactly who you need to be. Uh,
Mm.
and so my job as a holistic therapist is to help you understand all those layers of yourself, and how you show up in the world, how in your relationships, so that you can create the life that you want and what it looks like for you. And so
Yeah.
that's what being a holistic therapist means to me.
Okay, that's great. So I know that you also your approach is from expressive arts approach. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you do that in this holistic frame?
Mhm, mhm. Yes, I really enjoy expressive arts therapy.
Mm.
And through the arts, and like I was saying, like there are different kind of access points to that person's inner being. And one of those ways is through the creative process. Um, and what really stood out to me with expressive arts is that different people also have different ways of expressing themselves, and not everyone can articulate eloquently how they're feeling and thinking, in traditional talk therapy. And so for me, expressive arts is tapping into that nonverbal um, part of our brain, that creative part of our brain,
Mm.
uh, and using that creative process to explore feelings visually or through movement or through music or sound, to gain insight into their patterns, their feelings, their behavior, and just in ways that we typically don't think about when we're exploring our feelings and in therapy. Um, so a lot of it, it's very experiential, right? So when I'm talking about using the creative process, it's understanding that a lot of the things that we do in our life show up when we are making a simple drawing or attempting to create a painting or dance to music. Similar thought processes that come up when I'm creating come up in the real world. So like insecurities or self-doubt come up, or feelings of anxiety when I'm trying to create something new or put something on the canvas. Similar things happen. And in session, when I invite my clients to use the creative process, all those things come up. And that's how I get to work with all of those pieces that I was talking about earlier.
That's so exciting. How interesting. So I have so many questions now. Um, I it's fascinating. You're so right that especially for those that have a hard time verbalizing, and I don't know if you speak a different language, but you know, a lot of folks, if we don't have the vocabulary to make connections with, it's really hard to tell and to know ourselves what's going on. And so do you like have people dance and get up and move or draw or what happens in the sessions with you?
But I think using, you know, things like paint and music can help relieve some of that intimidation that comes with like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what that means. And kind of use the symbols and the meanings that come through the art as a way to express themselves. So if it's colors, like people are very familiar with what colors might mean, you know, in terms of feelings, right? Like usually, like sometimes blue is sad, right? So it's assigning personal meaning to colors and objects and things that come up in the creative process that start to be the symbol for that person. So it could be different for everybody,
Right.
but people can use all the ways that they would talk about art to talk about their feelings.
Yeah. Wow. So I don't know if I'm assuming you get this question. Do they have to be an artist?
Yeah, good question. That's definitely the the question. No, you don't have to be an artist to participate or engage in expressive arts therapy. In fact, it could be even better if you don't, because you can have this clean slate. You don't need any special skills to, you know, take some color and put it on paper. Um, when I work with my clients, I just invite them to have an open mind and have fun, and we'll kind of see where the process takes us. And that's part of my role too, is to kind of follow their lead,
Mhm.
and see how, you know, what materials they want to work with. And so, no, you don't have to be an artist.
I'm curious because, you know, you and I are both in the Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
and this is very much a left brain
Mm-hmm.
area.
Yeah.
We have a lot of engineers around us
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of tech companies, right? And so I'm curious, who are the people that are drawn to you in this type of approach, and what's the population that you focused on or that you see get drawn to you?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. I think, I mean, so going back to my own cultural upbringing, people that didn't grow up learning the vocabulary and the skills to express themselves, um, art is a great way to start to learn that vocabulary and tap into a part of their brain that they're not usually using, especially for like this area, left-brained dominant people. They're constantly using that part of their brain. And so a lot of times it's nice and refreshing to use a different part of our brain and get out of that logical mind and tap into the fun, like almost like childlike state that art can bring to people. And it's calming. Um, so yeah, people that didn't grow up with the skills, or that want to develop and strengthen the skills in another way.
I'm just thinking about my own situation. You know, I spent the first 10 years in Taiwan myself, and I remember in elementary school we had art classes, and so it was part of the education, but being in the US for so many years and going through grad school, I became one of those people that was very left brain, and a whole other reason, but I burnt out partly, I think, because of a variety of things. And I got to the point where I couldn't, I lost the whole creativity. I lost all that play component. So I love what you're talking about in terms of bringing back the right brain and bringing in that sort of free flow approach. and I would imagine like if I were to seek you out when I was in that period of burnout, I'd probably be one of those people that was like that would be so frozen. Like I, you know, when through my healing process, I actually did start to paint and just let myself go. But if I were to be in a session with somebody that's wanting me to, if I perceive it as sort of a performance or I'm going to be judged or, you know, as I'm creating whatever comes through, I would imagine I get sort of frozen. So can you talk about how you work with that in your clients? Oh, yeah, I can't hear you anymore.
You hear me?
Oh, there we are. Okay.
It's the mic thing.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah, so your question, it brings up the aspect of safety and building trust in session, which is, what we're taught to do as therapists, and how I do that with art. And that process is to one, I tell my clients everything that we do, the things, the activities, or the art, creative projects that we do are invitations and they're not requirements. So there's always something else we can do. I make sure that the clients know that they have the agency within this space. And so I do provide and am open to being flexible and doing something differently. And like I was saying earlier, like follow their lead. And so it's not ever just one thing that we have to do. Like there are other things we can do, and let's talk about it and move through it together. So just as with any work with a therapist, it's collaborative. And I try to be mindful of that, and also, explore with the client what the experience that they come in with, like what they're comfortable with. But it's also about being mindful of the materials we use too. Sometimes it could be things that feel more contained. So like collaging in the beginning, you don't have to draw anything yourself, right? Finding pictures or images or words that resonate with you and that stick out to you versus you coming up with the words and images yourself.
Mhm, mhm.
Kind of a spectrum that you can work with in terms of um, really establishing a trusting and safe environment to explore and kind of rediscover what that creative process looks like for you.
That sounds so fun and awesome.
Yeah, love it.
And you're so warm and inviting. I would imagine that you create that sense of safety pretty fast with your clients. And I imagine your office must be so fun. It must be full of all kinds of things and activities and toys and stuff.
Constantly trying to see like what materials we can use, and looking for inspiration in different places of like, can I use that? Can I just bring this to my office and save it for, a project or some art that I can do?
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, and I'm just kind of gathering and looking around for all those things that I can use.
I love that. And that's the advantage of actually having a physical office these days, right? As opposed to there's so much telehealth these days.
Yes, it's nice to get back into the tactile things of piece of therapy where you can actually use your hands, you can move around, you can see and hear and experience a different environment, and all of that kind of can be a part of the creative process. So it's really cool to immerse yourself in something new and different, or at least maybe go back to not telehealth.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love that. Now, I'm thinking a little bit more because you were talking earlier, again, this idea of holistic connecting mind, body, emotion, and spirit. You know, our counseling field and therapy field is really good in emphasizing certainly the mind, right? And that's been such an emphasis the last couple of decades. And then the emotion part certainly is there as well. This this body and the spirit part, I think, is getting more and more recognition, even though the spirit part is really actually part of the founding of the field at the very beginning. That's a whole other topic. But I'm curious, Valerie, on how you incorporate those areas. I know, you talk about movement and stuff. I'm more curious at this point about the spirituality component. I could see the fun and the play, and
Yeah.
I like to hear what that looks like for you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So how do I incorporate that spiritual piece into my work with clients? So, when I think about spirituality, I think about our values and what's meaningful for us. And so helping people or, you know, helping myself understand what's important for somebody, what are the values that they hold, and what's motivating them to be in therapy, to make the change that they came to therapy for, is how I incorporate that spirituality. And to also, thinking about the creative process when I talk about helping my clients understand all those layers of themselves um, and how they show up in the world. A lot of times people come into therapy with an unhelpful pattern in their life that they're recognizing that's not working for them anymore, or a mantra or a, anything that's not working right. And so we work with that creative process and we explore those values and things that are meaningful for them and start to integrate that. And I help them rewrite a new story and rewrite a new way of looking at the world, or start to reform and transform that worldview so that they can move toward, like I'm saying, creating that life that they want. And so it's all about looking at that big picture, right? Of like, what's the point of, fixing that relationship, or what's the point of getting to know yourself better? And so it's kind of looking at that big picture.
Yeah, yeah. Now, values and connection to spirituality. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about, because you mentioned how we use the mantras. And I love that concept of how we use mantras, because I'm now starting to think, oh, I probably don't have very helpful mantras at times. Really. Yeah, right? So can you talk about some of the unhelpful mantras that people may be coming into therapy with?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is like, I'm not good at art, right? Or like, uh,
Yeah.
good at this, or I'm not good enough, or I mean, those are very common, or like, I
Yeah.
do this on my own. I don't have the voice, or I lost my voice. Um, however that shows up. And those are the things that we kind of have to dig a little deeper to get to a lot of the times, of like, what are those thoughts? What are those unhelpful patterns? Um, and that's, a lot of times half of the work. And then when that comes, it starts to be a place of like acceptance around it. And then when we talk about transforming those things with the creative process, it might look like a picture, right? Like, is this collage even good enough? Well, let's talk about it. Like,
Mm.
what do you mean, and what's showing up for you? And how can we come to a place of creating a mantra where you come to acceptance around this piece of art that you made? And that's a very small way to start, but that's where it all begins, right? In these small little moments
Yeah.
to make changes and start to practice these new thoughts with a little place, and then you bring it out into the world and you start to make those little shifts.
Yeah, that's an awesome sort of concept. Again, I love that word of mantra because when I think of that word, I often associate it with religion, right? And that's a whole other uh, discussion. And maybe we could talk more about that in terms of the difference with religion and spirituality. But I never made that connection of, yeah, a mantra could actually, it's how we think about ourselves and how we think about the world. And we have agency to change what that mantra could
Right.
be. Yeah. And that certainly it affects us as a spirit being and how we carry ourselves.
Right. Yeah, and I think the word that people can be more familiar with is those positive affirmations, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
then when you think about like a therapist, you might think about like a coping thought, right? Like what are those
Yeah.
more helpful thoughts that we can think in those moments that we find challenging, and how can we talk to ourselves in a way that can keep motivating us or move us through that without, you know, hurting ourselves or others, that we can move through this in a way that serves our purpose now, but our bigger goal in life and our purpose that we might discover along the way.
Yeah. Oh, loving this discussion. Yeah. So I don't know if you feel comfortable in how in talking about the sort of again, if we want to differentiate spirituality with religion and how that gets incorporated in your practice.
Mhm. Yeah, we can talk about that. Let's see. Yeah, so for me, I definitely made that differentiation for myself. I grew up Catholic. I went through many different milestones along the way. And I think for me, the religion really helped to set a foundation for me as to values, like what's important to like treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Like those guidelines around how to be with yourself and be with other people. And then from that, I took like my sense of spirituality and how I see myself in the world,
Mm.
uh, and what my purpose is. And that can be very different from what a religion says your purpose is, or how a religion might define what we need to do in our life. And so the difference between religion and spirituality for me is finding your own path
Yeah.
and what connection to a God or a higher power means to you.
Mm. Great, great. So can you talk a little bit about it in that way? What kind of people, what kind of I don't know if there's a certain area of population or identities that people tend to seek you out or that you're wanting to work more with in specialization because uh, I think a lot of people again given Silicon Valley I think a lot of people get turned off with the idea of religion and even to a lot of um to a large extent the idea of spirituality. I have a lot of clients that come in being atheist and agnostic, and they don't want to talk about any of this, what they term woo-woo or that, that realm. But the way that you framed it in terms of the values and how we want to be in the world, I think is applicable for everyone. So can you talk a little bit about what that's like to practice here in the Silicon Valley type of people that walk in the door?
Yeah, I think the way that I have approached this work and tending to that spirituality piece is my passion to heal intergenerational trauma. It's like finding that motivation underneath of, again, like, why are you in therapy? What is the motivation? What is the purpose behind it? If you're wanting to change something in your life, what is the bigger reason for that? And so the people that I love working with and enjoy working with, and the people that come to me are wanting to address that piece. They see the big picture and they understand that when they can make a change for themselves, they're impacting the next generation, and the ones after that, and kind of healing a lot of those wounds that have already been, established from generations before. And it's big work to do. It's a big undertaking. So I think, again, it goes back to my cultural roots. It's changing the way that we treat each other, the way that we interact with our children,
Mhm.
and yeah, breaking, breaking those patterns that are not working and they're not um, serving the purpose of deep connection with our family, with ourselves. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, there's more and more research certainly on the impact of intergenerational trauma on our cellular level, but through the generations. Yeah, and so very important work, and I love that work too. Yeah, working to heal all that's been passed down. And it sounds like you work with the parents who now have kids
Yeah.
so that it doesn't get further passed on.
Yeah.
And I would imagine even with working with these parents, it could change even how they respond to their own parents, and that could change even in this generation as well.
Yeah. Yes. That's a really good point. And yeah, I do work with parents, and I work with kind of like three layers of people, right? It's the adults that are now noticing later in life that there are some skills they'd like to develop and learn about themselves. And then I work with parents of young children, kind of, yeah, teaching them some new ways to interact and manage behavior that would otherwise be not so helpful, or at least not conducive to building a healthy relationship, and maintaining a healthy relationship with their child. So I work with those parents and start young, right? I start them young. Like, let's start with building that emotional connection right away. Um, and and to be able to set boundaries in loving but very effective ways.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so awesome. Yeah, I love these folks that come in even before becoming a parent, actually, but certainly those that are young parents or have young kids. That's such a motivation for them to heal themselves so they don't pass it on. So I love that they come in, and even the ones that come in before they are even pregnant and they want to heal themselves so that they could be better parents as they plan their family. Yeah. So such valuable work and important and so fulfilling. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's so awesome to be able to tap into my creative side, but also do the work that I see as important for myself and like for my family and extended family, because all the things that I see as beneficial and valuable to my clients, I am doing with them in a very parallel way, right? Like I see it, I experience it, and that's how I really know how important the work is that I do.
Mhm. That's a great segue for my next question as we end this actually is, you talk about this holistic and approach in different ways and how to tap in with clients and their struggles. As therapists ourselves, it's so important for us to take care of ourselves and be healthy ourselves in all these different ways too, right? So what are some practices that you also do for yourself to be the healthiest you?
Yeah, for sure. So I have my own therapist. Um, I work through my own feelings and everything too. I have my own therapist. I I love being out in nature and getting my physical activity and getting fresh air. Um, and I do a lot of yoga. I think that really just taps into both my physical well-being and my spiritual well-being. Because it just taps into what we were talking about earlier, like forming new mantras for myself and taking care of my body, taking care of my mind. And I just try to be mindful of all those different layers that I was talking about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that physical activity is what I'm, as you're just saying, hiking and yoga, and certainly getting our own therapist. So important to integrate what works for you and what, yeah, because each person is different in what we need and what our body needs, right?
Right. Yeah.
As you and I are both sitting here, that's starting to storm outside, so we can't really go for a hike.
Okay. Not today.
Not today. Well, Valerie, this has been awesome, and thank you so much for sharing where you and your piece and how you contribute to the healing of our area and the community. Is there anything else that I didn't ask that you want to add and talk about?
Mhm. No, I think we touched on a lot of really good topics in terms of the work that we do as therapists here in the Asian American community, as well as the Bay Area. I think it's important work that we do. So I'm so happy that we got to talk about the work that we do and what's special about us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And maybe you could tell the folks who are listening and watching this how they could contact you and get a hold of you.
Yeah, the best way to reach me and contact me is through my website, which is holistictherapyca.com. There is a free consultation button there on all the pages where you can find a time on my schedule and find a time to talk with me for a few 15 minutes. And we'll figure out what you need and how we can get that support for you.
Awesome. And I will have that on the website as well in the note in the descriptions.
Cool.
All right, Valerie, it's been awesome talking with you. I'm sure we'll reconnect in the community as well. And yeah, hope you have a great day, rest of your day.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, see you.